You're listening to the uMentor Talk Show, now available on the Umoja app. I'm your host, Imran Ramsey, and on this weekly talk show, we invite professionals and teenagers to take us through their journeys and to give us advice. And remember, if you have any questions for the people you see on the show, you can always leave them in the Inspire app. And of course, as always, that's where we wanted to start with just a few words about the Inspire app. It is a question and answer platform for career advice in our Shia community. So, as a rising professional, you can ask for great advice from other professionals. And as a mentor, you can give advice to our community's future professionals. And that's available via the Umoja app for free with an Umoja account on Android and iOS. So, hope you will download and use that. Um, and our next announcement, so Ramadan Kareem from all of us at Moja Reach. The only way we're able to share stories of professionals, students, and community organizations is because of the generous support of viewers and listeners like you listening right now. So this month of Ramadan, please consider supporting our show at umojaoutreach.org/donate or through the donate option in the Umoja app. Every little bit goes a long way in helping us continue the show, helping us continue opening career doors for our youth and connecting communities. So we thank you for that. Okay, now let's get to today's speaker. So today's speaker is Marcus Santo Domingo. He is a PE coach and teacher who's currently studying to earn a BA and MA in education, as well as a California teaching credential for math. And as well, currently he's working as a physical education coach and as a substitute teacher at City of Knowledge, K-12 Islamic school in Pomona, California. Also, he is currently a volunteer basketball coach for Claremont Youth Basketball. His passion, as I'm sure he'll tell us, his passion for sharing knowledge and working with children was kindled by positive experiences with educators, and coaches as a youth. And he hopes that his work as an educator can serve as an expression of gratitude for those who have inspired him. So we will definitely hear a lot more about that in this show. And for now, let's welcome Brother Marcus. Assalamu alaikum, Marcus. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy
Of
to be here.
course. Yeah, especially thank you for making time during the month of Ramadan as well. I know it's crazy some weeks.
Oh yeah, no, definitely glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, I know we went through that a little bit, but can you tell me a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Northern California. That's where I grew up and called
Hmm.
home. Best area for sure in the world. I love it.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I went to grew up playing sports. Family was
Hmm.
a big sports family, and that's kind of how I built community, made friends, and all that kind of thing. Had some impactful coaches at a young age who really taught me a lot of skills. Whether it's teamwork or discipline,
Hmm.
kind of built good habits through that. And then I would say in high school, I had some impactful teachers that really got me excited about learning and wanted to pursue that path. And so now I'm here studying education, working in schools, working with youth, and yeah.
That's great. So you mentioned like the sports element. How did like having an upbringing that was full of sports and being coached and also coaching, how did that push you into knowing that you wanted to teach?
Yeah, so the one of the baseball teams I played for growing up, early on, they were doing summer camps for younger kids, and one of my coaches offered me a position working at the summer camp, and that was kind of my first job,
Okay,
and
yeah.
I just fell in love with it. It was such a great time being able to interact with these 6, 7, 8 year olds, teach them skills for the first time, especially with sports. I think it's really fun because you can see the joy kids have from learning.
Mm.
A new skill, and it also kind of taught me a lot about different leadership things, and yeah, just kindled that passion for teaching and sharing the knowledge that I had built up.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that. I'm sure. So we're going to talk a lot more about your passion for teaching and learning and education later. But for now, can we talk a little bit about, so how does, if someone decides that they want to go into education, how does that process work roughly?
Yeah, so in California, there's you need to get your teaching credential, and
Okay.
so that you can do that through school districts or colleges and universities. And it's usually around a year-long program where you're working with whatever institution you choose, taking classes and that kind of thing. And then there's CSET testing, which is the final test at the end of the year that you have to take. And so if you want to teach in elementary school, you get a multiple subject credential. And so that's kind of just a test that covers the basics of all subjects, because in
I see.
California, elementary school teachers, you get one class and you're teaching
Mhm.
all the subjects. But if you want to
Mhm.
do 6 through 12 education, then you get a single subject credential. So it would be specific to math, English, history, that kind of thing.
Hmm. Okay. So, but is that like, so you do that after your undergrad, or can you do an undergrad in like a BA in education and then do your certification?
No, so that would be after your undergrad.
I
At
see.
least from what
Okay.
I've seen, there haven't been any joint programs. Usually you do your undergrad and then it's like a year-long program of getting your
Oh,
credential.
I see. So how are like, what if you do your undergrad in something else? Do you have to then do a longer teaching certification program, or can you just do the 1 year program?
Yeah, so you can get your undergrad in anything.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, if you studied math, right, you got your BA in mathematics,
Hmm.
then that actual coursework as of 2021, because of different things that were happening with COVID and stuff, Gavin Newsom changed the process. So that
Hmm.
coursework actually covers the test. So you don't need to take the test.
Oh.
You
Oh,
just need to
wow. Okay.
enroll in a program with a school district or a university to get your credential.
Okay. Okay. That's cool. Okay. That's good to know. And then, so how has your path been, like in your case? What path have you followed?
So the program I'm in is a 4+1. So it's a 4-year BA program plus a year to get your master's in education. And then the program getting the master's in education is also a credentialing program. And it's through the Claremont Graduate University,
Mm.
which is the graduate school of Pitzer College, which is the college I attend.
Okay. Hmm. Got it. Okay, cool. Um, so maybe if we can talk like a little bit more about your program. How have you been liking your undergrad? Because I know you're in your 4th year. And then
Mhm.
what are some things that like you're looking forward to or you're concerned about for the master's and the certification?
Yeah, so the undergrad experience has been amazing because the way the program works is it's like an interdisciplinary approach to education. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been taking like history classes, English classes, math classes, psychology, sociology, like a whole
Oh,
range of
wow.
different disciplines. Yeah, and
Mm.
each class is kind of like my final research paper for the class or research presentation has been geared on education and the way that kind of discipline views and interprets educational systems, different teaching pedagogy, things of
Hmm.
that nature.
And then, so like which you're going to be a math teacher eventually, right? Or like that's your
Yes.
goal, to
Yeah.
teach math. So why do you need to take all those interdisciplinary courses in order to teach math? I feel like that's a common question.
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway that approach has kind of given me with regards to teaching math is, everyone has that math teacher who writes the formula on the board and then gives them a worksheet, and the entire class is just sitting in silence,
Yeah.
doing some, or, in elementary school, you have your times table, and it's like, all right, you
Hmm.
got 1 minute, do these times multiplication problems as fast as
Right.
possible.
Yeah.
And from looking at how other disciplines are taught and different like psychological theory on, brain science and, the
Hmm.
science of learning, really like it's more effective if we can connect the math skills students are learning to their lived experience and the real world, and viewing math more as like a language and a form of communication, and helping students see how they can use math to communicate their thoughts and lived experiences in the world. So, instead of getting like learning how to calculate area
Hmm.
for kind of this abstract farm, right? There's a lot of questions where it's like, all right, if you have 20 sheeps and 15 acres of land, Like,
Yeah.
what's the most effective way to do your fencing, right? Why
Mhm.
not
Yes,
just
yes.
why not? Okay, here's your local park. Here are the dimensions of the park. What do you want that park to look like? Let's try and create a design that is going to be more like effective for what your community wants.
Mm.
And then students will be able to see, oh, there's like an actual application for these math skills. Because if we want to create change in our community, we're going to need to use math in order to create a proposal that the city takes seriously. And so trying to create more projects that get students involved in their lived experience, but also in the process of learning.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. We were talking about that, during the pre-interview, and you like raised the thing that educators have to be interdisciplinary themselves. So like can't only be focused on math. So like what is your plan to actually bring that into the classroom? Like I guess what other interest will you display to your students, and how do you think that will improve their learning of math?
Yeah, so one of the classes I took in high school, it was a hip hop history class,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, and that kind of like sparked my interest, excuse me, in
Mhm.
hip hop, and so I did a couple of projects on like hip hop education, how people incorporate that in their classroom, and so one example is there's this graffiti artist, Skate Martinez, and he does this whole like lesson plan on how he uses math to kind of plan his murals and art.
Hmm.
And so I think one way you can bring that into the classroom is, show the lesson plan and then have students design their own murals. And then you can also bring in kind of how is art used to change the physical environment that people exist in, and empower people to take ownership over kind of the streets that they're walking on. So instead of seeing just a gray building, they get to see, a colorful mural of like
Hmm.
something that represents them. So kind
Right.
of taking back, right? We got like all these billboards of advertisements that are like forced upon us, that we're like forced to look at. Whereas, like, okay, look, here's this practice of graffiti, right? Here's this resistance to all of these things that you're forced to see for you to take ownership of what you want to see in the world.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Actually, I don't think we talked about that specifically, like in the pre-interview. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that.
I'm trying to remember what I mentioned in the pre-interview.
I don't know. It does. I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's different. That's yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a nice new angle. Um, but something we actually did talk about was if you can talk about some common misconceptions about teaching and about
Mhm.
like this field in general, and then I guess what you think of them and what the truth is.
Yeah. So I remember, I think it was my sophomore year of high school. My math teacher told me, "Those who can do, those who can't teach."
Wow, this
And
is a teacher as well.
yeah, as a teacher, I'm like, wow, like, what do you think of yourself, bro? Like, come on now. Um, But yeah, I think that like is true of bad teachers. Like bad teachers don't do, they just like show up, get their paycheck, and are excited to have their summers off. But I think teachers that like really get kids excited about learning are
Mhm.
doing a whole bunch of stuff outside of the classroom and then bringing those experiences to the school, and to share with the kids about, look, this knowledge, while at times is going to seem distant and irrelevant, actually
Yeah.
isn't. And like it's actually
Right.
really
Right.
important that you're paying attention, that you show up excited to learn about this stuff. And I think it's a lot more impactful if teachers are bringing in their lived experience and kind of their side projects, their passion projects to share
Yes.
with students, rather than just being like, look, this is important and this is why. If they can really see a human example of how the knowledge they're learning is being applied, then I think we're going to get a lot more engaged students.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about it like in order to be able to show students how you can actually apply knowledge, you have to have applied it first. You have to know it really well. So you have to do even more than, just doing. I don't know. That's yeah. Um okay. Is there another like common misconception that you want to share? If not, we can move on.
Another that I feel like there was one more thing that I mentioned that now is slipping my mind.
Mm, I don't think so. But
Okay.
I mean, if you have anything else.
No, no, no.
No?
It's,
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I feel like that's the main one, like I've personally heard as well. Um, let's actually, so one more question, and then I want to connect it to something else that we were discussing. What has been your most memorable moment while you've been coaching or teaching or in your studies, like studying education?
Yeah. So I worked as a swim instructor for a little bit, and there was this student I was working with, and I think it was like a 4 week program, and
Okay.
the first 2.5 weeks, he was really struggling to get it, and his whole thing was like, I want to be able to swim across the school or across the pool, Marcus. Like I want to be able to do it, and so we were working on it. We were working on it, and then finally he was like, all right, I'm ready. And he tried to
Hmm.
swim across the pool. And when he got to the other side, the smile on his face, man, I'll never
Wow.
forget. It's like one of those moments that whenever I'm having like a hard time being patient with students or like, man, like these kids just aren't getting it, like I can always just remember that moment and be like, maybe they won't get it with me, but like I know that I'm planting the seeds and like
Mm.
trying to build so that eventually like they can have that moment. And I mean,
The aha moment.
we've all experienced those aha moments.
Yeah. Right.
And so just being able to see that in someone else is amazing.
Great. So in your speaker, like in your form that you sent us, you wrote that like one of the quotes that you really resonate with is to teach us to learn, which is like roughly something that Imam Ali alayhi salam said. So how do
Mhm.
you think, or if you want to talk about that, and then also how do you think that this idea of like learning, but not just like rote memorization, but learning from many different fields and kind of applying your knowledge to society and actually doing things, how does that connect to Islamic ideals?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that that quote is well. First, I'll say that, like I mentioned, my family was a big sports family, and so sports
Yes.
was kind of always my passion growing up, and that's like
Hmm.
what I
Hmm.
dedicated my time to. I even remember like in high school, like there were definitely weeks and stuff where the only reason I was really showing up and like present in class was because I knew I had a game later that day, and I didn't want to get in trouble, so I didn't play. But then around like my senior year, freshman year of college was when I really started to engage with Islamic ideas, and that just the emphasis placed on seeking knowledge.
Hmm.
The first part of the Quran that's revealed. I know it's sometimes translated to recite, but I think the first time I saw it, it was translated to read, and so that was like, oh wow, like
Hmm.
my purpose in life is I got to read and accumulate as much knowledge as possible, and so that emphasis on learning was huge in just motivating me to kind of take more ownership of my learning. um, and then one that quote, to teach is to learn, really clicked in like, oh, like yeah, that makes sense. I want to pursue a career in education because I know that's how I'm going to be able to continue learning and growing as a person, bettering myself, which were all kind of ideas that Islam emphasizes.
Hmm. And then maybe this is a good time to ask, like, so can you talk a little bit more about your journey with Islam? Because you, as you had mentioned, like you weren't raised in a Muslim family
Yeah.
during your childhood.
Yeah. So um, I think that the like how I discovered it was kind of
Hmm.
just like meeting a bunch of good Muslims, right? Like I just met a bunch of people who I was like, oh yeah, like I really like how you see the world and your worldview. And then kind of after realizing that, I was like, oh, all these people are Muslim. Like, what's up with that? Like, I should probably look into that. And so as I started to look into it more and read about it, um, it was kind of, I think it was the autobiography of Malcolm X that like
Hmm.
really I was like, oh wow, like this is something that can have a really positive impact on my personal life, but also the greater community and greater society. Like these are ideals and messages that I think there need to be more of. Um, and then as that, and that was still like an ideological level.
Yes. Hmm.
And then there's a moment where I reached out to one of my earliest mentors and was like, hey, like I want to learn how to pray. And then once I started praying, that's like when I felt like I experienced, um, I just had experiences where I was like, yeah, like this is the thing that like I need to pursue and keep implementing in my life and learning more about, because I can just see how it's having a positive impact on me.
Hmm. That's such an amazing story. And then like you were, I think one thing that you said that I was thinking about is teaching gave a foundation to like those core beliefs that you knew you always had, and Islam
Mhm.
also helped you kind of like express those beliefs that you didn't have. I don't know the language. I guess you could
Yeah,
explain.
no,
So I guess
definitely.
talk about that a little bit more if you
Yeah,
can.
so part of my upbringing, it wasn't like religious. My parents
Mhm.
were very much like we want our kids to discover that for themselves. We don't want to impose our
Mm.
personal beliefs on them,
Okay. Mhm.
which I have a lot of respect for. And so there are like all these ideas, because I would say up until I was like 16, 17, 18, I
Mhm.
was like pretty much operating in this like materialistic worldview, in that like
Mhm.
only what I can see, touch, feel, and taste is there. But
Mhm.
then, as I think is evident, like there is this unseen world around us, and so um, Islam was kind of the thing that like really gave me the language and tools to navigate that in a way that made sense to me. Because I had like I still I still have one of the most important messages of the prophet is the idea that there are like 124,000 prophets that have come, and there are like so many
Yes.
different messages of God that we need to be conscious of in this like interfaith and intercultural awareness that needs to
Mhm.
exist. Um, and so just incorporating that into my studies as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you. So if there's, I do have another question, obviously, but is there anything else you want to say about this topic?
Just, it's been a great, like, I'm super grateful for having encountered um, those Muslims who taught me, like, because like anything, right, there are going to be people who teach the message in a positive way, and people
Hmm.
who represent it in a negative way. And I think what,
Right.
what is so horrible is like how media represents Islam and Muslims, right? And so um, if you don't have those personal connections with people, if you're like an outsider, then you're really not going to be able to connect with it. So just I appreciate all those Muslims who kind of have the patience to deal with outsiders, because I know it's like
Mm.
it's draining and a lot. And so there are just some people who kind of had that patience with me, and helped me work through all of those misconceptions that I had.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, extend gratitude to them.
Hmm. That's that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I know it's probably like not the easiest thing to like formulate into like a 5 minute story and share. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um, one thing I was thinking about, since this is our like episode is during the month of Ramadan. Can you talk about how like your month of Ramadan has been going and how you've been trying to balance everything? Because I know you're very busy
Mhm.
with like fulfilling religious obligations, but also with like growing during this month.
Yeah, it's so this is my second Ramadan. And I would say that, man, I'm just taking it day by day. um and yeah, I mean there are challenges, but there's also like, to me, I feel like I'm still in that kind of new revert wave where it's like, oh, this is just like
Mm.
such an amazing experience. Like I'm
Hmm.
really able
Hmm.
to kind of strengthen my relationship to God through kind of like seeking sustenance outside of this material world, be it food or other things. And then also just like being able to kind of work on my discipline and practice. Am I gonna watch this movie that maybe, doesn't have the best messaging, or am I gonna instead read some Quran, or,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, I'm I'm reading this book right now by I'm blanking on her name, but her last name's like Murata or something like that, called The Tao of Islam. And
Hmm.
it's an amazing book. She's this Japanese scholar who I believe is like one of the first women to go study in Qum in Iran.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
yes,
Hmm.
it's a great book. I'm only like 3 or 4 chapters in, but so far it's been phenomenal.
Okay. Yeah, great. So one
And
so
I will
one
say,
oh
sorry,
yes, of course.
her book, the Vision of Islam, was
The
kind of one
vision
of
of
the like more academic textbook style books that I read that really kind of broke down the message in a
Islam.
way that I resonated with. So
Wow, okay. Yeah, I've never heard of this person. We should here, I'll type the name and the I'm just gonna type the name for the people who are watching,
uh,
and so we can see it on the screen. As that's the next question.
yeah,
Okay. So next final question about education before we go into the final piece of advice is can you be a teacher and do something else? So I guess
yeah.
obviously that's an obvious question. Like, why is it important as a teacher to not be like a monolith? And we touched on this a little bit before, but just to emphasize it again.
Yeah, I think it's a must. I think it's a must. You have to be able to do other things besides just teach. And it goes back to what I was saying about when, if teachers are just teachers, they're going to be boring. Like students are going to
Yes.
be like, you just show up and you're just a student like us. Like we don't want to hear just about school, like what's going on in your personal life, like what are cool things you're doing.
Hmm.
And so I think it's crucial to have other aspects of yourself, other identities that you can, bring to the classroom to connect with students. Because that's another thing that I could talk about forever, but is that at the crux of, based off of my studies, the crux of teaching is building relationships with students. And that like you might not be an expert in your field, right? You might not be an expert in math, you might not be an expert
Hmm.
in history,
Hmm.
but if you can develop strong relationships and get students excited about learning, that's the key. Teaching is actually less about delivering content and more about cultivating positive learning practices within students.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of one of the biggest takeaways from that interdisciplinary approach that I've gotten to experience is that the more ways and the more kind of skills you can build in learning habits, that's what's going to create good students who are successful, not just in your class, but in, their lives 10, 20 years from now, because students are going to forget formulas. They're going to forget hard information. But if
Right.
you get them to like repeat a skill over and over again that
Hmm.
they can implement, in any aspect of their life, that's something that they're never going to forget and that they're going to be able to
Right.
take with them
Right.
forever.
Yeah, that's so true. Or even like the relationships that they build with you or with, you know, the class. Yeah. Okay. Great. Um, so before we're unfortunately already almost out of time, but before we sign off for now for this episode, can you tell us about your final piece of advice? So what is one thing that you would want people to take away from this show, having learned if they maybe didn't take away anything else?
Um, Man, my final piece of advice would just be, dang, I'm blanking. Did I have a piece of advice in our pre-conversation? Can you give me
Oh
a
no,
hint?
you said you'd think about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
dang. I think my final piece of advice would just be to, it's something that my dad taught me, and that it's like we're gonna have mundane tasks to do. We're gonna have busy work, things
Hmm.
we don't like, and if you can cultivate joy in that and find passion in doing those things,
Hmm.
um, it's just going to make them a lot easier, but also is going to enhance kind of the things that you're actually excited about because you're going to have practice um, cultivating joy for work and kind of turning your work into play. And
Right.
the sooner you can do that, I think the sooner life becomes more enjoyable overall.
Yeah, I think that's a great final piece of advice, especially on the spot, coming up with it on the spot. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Marcus, for sharing, your journey, and everything. And if our like listeners or viewers want to contact you, maybe like to ask more about like, advice or anything, where can they do that?
I say my email is the
Okay.
best
Mhm.
way to do that. Yeah.
Okay,
So
that's
it's
cool. Yeah. Actually,
in
yes,
the
I do
chat.
have your email. Yes, I will put it on the screen. So it's yeah.
Yeah, so that's the best one
Yeah.
to reach me
Okay.
at.
Great.
And yeah, I mean, I gotta get on this app too that you were talking about at the beginning of
Yeah,
the
the
show.
Inspire apps.
Yeah, the
Yes.
Inspire
That'd
app.
be cool. Yeah, then we could then also so yes, you can also reach out to Marcus on the Inspire app. Inspire platform. It's on the uMentor app.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Hope
you
you have
very
a
much.
great rest of your month.
You as well. You as well.
Thanks. Take care. And thank you to everyone, to all our listeners for tuning in to the uMentor Talk Show. We're gonna have another show in a few weeks, so we hope you'll tune in again for another interview. And if you would like to come on the show, please just reach out to us at our email mentor@umojaoutreach.org. And remember, you can always catch our previous episodes on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also on our website. So there's many places where you can watch our episodes. Thank you again for tuning in. Umoja Outreach Foundation, uniting and empowering the Shia community.